This is the video for Mark chapter 2. It's January 2nd. Now, Jesus is already drawing crowds at this point in the Gospel of Mark, right at the beginning of his public ministry. And whenever you draw crowds, there are going to be those who are there because they want to be, because they're interested in what you have to say. But then there are also going to be those who are there just because they want to be where the action is, or they're like the rubberneckers who drive by an accident on the side of the street and they want to see what's going on. Maybe their friends drag them. So there's some folks who are here because of who Jesus is, and there are other folks who are here because they want to see what's going on, what's causing all the commotion and the chaos. Now, in each of these passages, there are maybe like four main stories in Mark chapter 2. There's the one where Jesus forgives sins, and then upon being challenged, heals the man whose sins he forgave. There's the one where Jesus eats with the wrong people, and he calls Levi to follow him. There's the one where Jesus discusses fasting, that John's disciples and the Pharisees, they fast, but Jesus' don't. What's going on there? And then the one where Jesus doesn't keep the Sabbath. Now, in each of these passages, there's a common enemy that appears throughout Mark chapter 2. You've got the scribes and you've got the Pharisees, and these are more or less the same people, same style of person. Both the scribes and the Pharisees were part of the religious establishment of the day. There were sort of four major religious sects in Judaism at that time. The Pharisees were the new up-and-coming ones. They're the ones who were really faithful to keeping the law. The others were the Zealots, who hated Rome, and they wanted to get rid of Rome by any means necessary. There were the Essenes, who would hang out in the desert and who would do a lot of reading, but who otherwise kind of removed themselves from society. John the Baptizer was thought to possibly be one of the Essenes. And then there were also the Sadducees, who were similar to the Pharisees, but they were where like the old money was. They also didn't believe in spiritual stuff like a resurrection, whereas the Pharisees did. So Jesus is making enemies of the scribes, who were the ones who could read, the literate folks of the day. They were also the ones who would write down stuff around the law. He's also making enemies with the Pharisees, and these are the two like ascendant parties, the two ascendant chunks of folks who you don't really want to be making enemies with them. But Jesus ends up doing that. Now, why did they not like what Jesus was doing? I mean, he was taking care of people. Well, I think it was the way in which he was taking care of people. He was doing stuff that ought to be done at a different time. He's breaking Sabbath. This was just not done. This was something where maybe the Pharisees were getting a little jealous. He was teaching with authority. This was stuff that would get them riled up. I wonder if they were more motivated by keeping the letter of the law, and Jesus was keeping more the spirit of the law, and that got them a little bit twisted. I wonder what you think about that. There are a few additional notes from this chapter. So the four friends that we get introduced to right at the beginning, who literally dig through a roof in order to get their paralyzed friend down to see Jesus, whenever I read that, I'm reminded, like, these are this type of friends, not only that I want to have, but like I want to be like. What are the ways in which you are being like those four friends and doing anything possible to clear out a way, clear out obstacles from folks getting to know Jesus and getting their lives changed by Jesus? A quick word on tax collectors. So tax collectors were agents of the empire, the Roman Empire at that time. And so this particular tax collector, Levi, was Jewish. And Jews hated Jewish tax collectors because not only were tax collectors kind of scummy, they would often collect more than they needed to and scrape a bunch off the top to go straight into their pockets. But Jewish tax collectors would essentially be embezzling from their people, and that was thought of as really not good, especially because the Jewish society at that time forbid usury. They didn't even charge interest on loans, and so for a Jewish person to be a tax collector for other Jews and to side with the empire over their ethnicity was just not done. David and Abiathar, who Jesus references, their characters in the Old Testament. Most Jews would be familiar with these characters. You can see that story in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 21, if you'd like. And this David is the same David, the king who killed Goliath, if you remember some Sunday school lessons you may have had. Finally, one other note is that Sabbath, which was Saturday at that time, was a traditional day of worship and rest for the Jews. The command that was given in the Ten Commandments was to keep the Sabbath day holy. Now, Jesus follows the spirit of this command, I think, but he doesn't follow the letter of this command, which may lead to some strife between him and the Pharisees. That's all for Mark chapter 2. Tomorrow, January 3rd, we'll be looking at Mark chapter 3. May God bless you in your reading of Scripture.